Belief in the paranormal has existed for centuries. Whether in art, books, or plays, the appeal of the supernatural continues.
Have you ever wondered what happens when we die?
Social media has provided a new way for people to explore the supernatural. But why do these beliefs persist?
At times of uncertainty and stress, you tend to see an increase in all forms of magical thinking.
After a global pandemic that changed the way we think about death, how has the nature of grief shifted for those who've experienced loss?
To me, it felt like a door of pain that he was gone.
Some people say they're turning to mediums to reconnect with their loved ones, looking for answers and reassurance.
And to go up there today and to give that message, it really moved me.
Ghosts, it's just energy. You're not going to be scared of a light bulb, so don't be scared of your loved ones.
They are all there to assist you with this journey.
This is a story about grief, the communities we build for support and the voices we turn to for comfort, in this world and the next.
I think there is an optimal temperature for different teas. You can get kettles now that have got different temperatures. So I don't know if boiling is good for Earl Grey or not.
Anita Chakraborty has been training as a medium for 5 years. Like many in this profession, her journey started with extreme loss.
On the end of January 2017, I found my dad dead in bed, and it was a very sudden death. We'd had dinner the night before with my mum, watched EastEnders. It was a very unremarkable night. And then the next morning, do you want a cup of tea? No response. And he's dead in bed. And that was followed in the same year by my parents' 2 cats dying. 2018 in March, my best friend committed suicide in Australia. And then in March 2019, my boyfriend died suddenly of a heart attack. So I had two and a bit years of sudden death after sudden death, and it was people very close to me. And that just led me on a journey of, okay, they're gone, where are they? So I started to see mediums in London, and each of the mediums said to me, you should be sitting in this chair, you should be doing what we do. And I thought, I can't do that because you have to be born with this gift. And then I've realised that you can actually train and learn how to develop these skills. My dad was a pivotal death, losing him, especially so suddenly. It was just kind of like the rug was completely pulled from under my feet. So the mediums that I saw were telling me that various members in spirit were, watching over me while I'm doing my herbal medicine and astrology, and how proud they are of me. And, and whenever my dad came through, he was always talking about my mum. And just saying, God bless you for putting up with her. She's a difficult, and the term they would use is that she's a difficult woman, and that's the sort of thing my dad would say. So I'd kind of laugh. It's not just trivial things, but also unexpected things that people in spirit tell you to give you validation that it's that person. Like my Daddy used to cook for us, and he was really, really good at making fried eggs.
Adam Swearjon lost someone close to him at a young age. He describes how visiting a medium helped him overcome his grief at this difficult time.
For a long time, around 2 years after he died, I tried to work through kind of that grief of him knowing that I'm never going to get to see him again and things like that. It just felt like that door of... To me, it felt like a door of pain that he was gone, just couldn't close. It was always open. Mike was a larger-than-life character, first of all. Everyone would describe him as that. He was the person in the room to be the loudest and the funniest. And to me, to sum it up, I'd call him my second dad, and he'd call me his third son. Whenever we do anything together, you have this wave of going, I'm never going to see him again. You know, I'm never going to be able to share another time with him again until the end of my life. It wasn't just getting closure on the fact that he died. It was like one door closed, the door of pain closed, and then this door of opportunity completely opened. And I was like, it's not just that I can now move on with the fact that he's not here, that I can't experience things with him anymore. I just needed to feel his hands on my shoulders. He had big warm hands, and I'm really feeling that right now. So I have half a feeling that he's listening in on us right now.
Mediumship is rapidly growing. In 2019, consumers spent nearly £32 million on the top 10 US psychic and astrology apps, compared to $19 million the previous year. Experts say rising interest in the paranormal often occurs at times of global crises. In 1925, London's College of Psychic Studies funded their current Chelsea location almost entirely through donations from those who'd lost loved ones in World War I. But why are people so interested now?
I think a kind of sense of a loss of control is at the heart of a lot of paranormal beliefs. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And specifically when it comes to bereavement, the idea that you kind of no longer have that contact. I mean, people, very commonly will report that when they've lost a loved one, they feel a sense of of loss of control. They just that their world's been turned upside down. They don't know what to do with themselves anymore. They're kind of just at a loss. At times of uncertainty and stress, you tend to see an increase in all forms of magical thinking. The idea that when our loved ones die, that's the end of them, we'll never have any contact with them again, is not something that most of us feel very comfortable about. And so any evidence that seems to support the idea of post-mortem survival, we will cling to. And I think that kind of explains a lot of why these kind of beliefs are so prevalent. I think this idea that when someone dies, a loved one dies, they're still around in some way, it can be both a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, on the one hand, in the short term, it may well help someone to cope because, that terrible sense of loss can be overwhelming, and it may help you to cope with that. The kind of downside to it is that it may prevent you from moving on, particularly if you're a relatively young person and you've got a lot of life left ahead of you.
Almost half the population say they're thinking about death more since the coronavirus outbreak. Professor Abby Day says that the public way people were forced to confront death has had a profound effect.
The pandemic did a number of things, of course. One of the outcomes that I think has lingered is this feeling of precariousness, of the feeling that we can't be certain about anything. The awful stories we've heard of how people weren't allowed to be with their loved ones during their last moments on Earth. And that's, to many people, just inconceivably horrible. And so we saw everywhere the sense of a shared grief. And while people couldn't get together physically, they certainly got together online. Social media, the clue's in the word, I guess, social, and the sense that it's about relationships and collaboration and community and cooperation and sharing. Those are the values underpinning social media. And so I think young people who are very used to that environment, it's in those spaces where people feel they belong, that they can share their grief. They'd rather be in a space that's more familiar and to them, much more part of their daily life. And so that would be for them social media.
Away from their screens, people seek communities where they feel supported. On a busy high street in South London, one such group meets, drawn together by their shared enthusiasm for talking to the dead. Paul Grant runs a group of trainee mediums who meet every Tuesday at a spiritualist church to practice and hone their psychic abilities.
As it's not freezing cold, we'll do it in here tonight. I try and keep it like a family environment because that way they all support each other. So afterwards, we go down to the pub, most of us anyway, because some, the personalities just don't want to go that way. So, but a lot of us do, we go to the pub, and that way I get everyone chatting to each other on a personal level. So they get to know about each other's lives, they become friends, they start meeting up outside the group. Then when there are problems, everyone jumps in to try and support that person. But they wouldn't do that if they didn't understand who they were personally rather than just in the group. There's a lady that's got cancer that is talking a lot on the group chat, and she's getting such a lot of positive, lovely messages from all of the people in the group. And in that group chat, there are people that was in the group years ago, they're not in it anymore, but they still like to be in it and chat with the new people.
One of the things which religious beliefs and to some extent paranormal beliefs do provide to people is a kind of community. That sense of community, I think, is still is important in all areas. You know, we all tend to gravitate towards people who have similar ideas to ourselves, and maybe limit more than we should do our interaction with people on the other side of the fence.
In the last 2 decades, we've seen a shift in people's approach to religion. Data from the latest census shows the number of people identifying as Christian has fallen by 35%. At the same time, those turning to newer spiritual beliefs have more than doubled, rising by 109%.
I think young people today, and I'm talking about millennials, Gen Z, I think those people are much more connected relationally and feel the sense and value in human relations. And that's part of the value with which they were raised. But it's also why, I think this is really important, why they may be more inclined than other generations to want to continue those relationships even after death. Many mainstream churches would disapprove of the notion that somebody is continuing their relationship. They feel very much that death is God's business, not grandma's business, not best friend's business, not deceased brother's business. And so they often have this sense that the person who is bereaved has to let go. And a lot of people don't want to let go. But also a lot of people may have felt very, very strongly the presence of their deceased relatives. And so they are even more convinced that there's no reason to let go.
The Church of England has a process for dealing with grief that they say helps mourners learn to live without. With more people turning from the Christian faith as they embrace spiritual practices, the Church is concerned about the implications of continuing those relationships after death.
What you don't get is the hope that's offered to you as well as to the person that you've lost and what that means for you. The whole process of bereavement is about a loss of certain part of yourself and learning to live without your loved one. I think they more often offer something quite short term. The trouble with quite a lot of contemporary spiritual offerings is that they're niche religions or they're niche spiritualities, and they give you what you want, but they don't give you a much bigger picture about what it all means. And that is problematic, because I think grief is tremendously important as a process to be gone through. And in order to reset your life, a life which is going to be without the loved one that you've lost, quite often Christian clergy are called to sort of try and travel with people who've had tremendous psychological issues and sense of desperate unresolved grief from not having gone through the rite of passage that death and dying is.
Whether Christian, spiritual or skeptic, the desire to belong to a supportive community remains strong. Mediums and psychics offer one solution, but will these beliefs continue to grow?
I think as time unfolds, we're going to see a growth in mediumship and clairvoyance and people being more open about it.
These beliefs are always going to be around. So the question of whether or not they kind of have a place in society is a kind of moot point, because they're always going to be here.
At times of loss, it's often said, grief is the cost of love. Regardless of your beliefs, at some point, this price unites us all. Whilst for many, death marks a permanent end, for others, continuing that relationship with the deceased can offer a way to navigate the absence left behind.
After seeing the medium, and I knew that I was being heard, I come up here and I run up this path up here, and I literally get to this point and turn on my heel, and as I turn, it's always in the morning, it's before work, I go, "Morning Mike, see if you can give me any strength for today, that would be really great." And then I'd turn around and I'd keep running and I'd go back the way I came and follow my route round, and that always, and then it feels like I'm set the day right, you know, and it feels like throughout the day I do feel that extra little boost of strength.